All right, let's take a look at the Ford Big Board, built for America, built Ford proud. Despite a nice first half in Game 2, Jayson Tatum's numbers in the finals still not up to snuff. Look at this. He's averaging 20 per game, but just 31% from the field in the series, dishing out 8 assists, however. Here's Tatum today when asked about being in the finals and if he is indeed a superstar.
This is a dream come true, playing in the finals. As a competitor, this is what you work for, right? You want to be the last team standing. You want to hold up that trophy. So I think to have a golden opportunity, right at your fingertips, just taking full advantage of it. You don't want to have any regrets. When it's all said and done, win or lose. I've seen it as a huge debate. Is he a superstar? Is he not? I want to know where that came from. Like, did I tweet that? Did I ever say that I'm a superstar or, I'm on the verge? That never came from me. But it has been a big deal this last year and a half or 2 years. And I see it all the time. And there's always been a question in the back of my head. I wonder who spoke on my behalf or said that or why that was such a big deal. But, if you win a championship, they can debate a lot of things. They can't debate whether or not, you're a champion.
All right. So, yeah.
You have to admit, he's becoming more and more self-aware and sort of reflective at the podium. You see growth there.
He's like a different guy now. Cedric Maxwell, you saw Jayson Tatum when he first came into the league. I remember he used to do interviews and he was whispering through them and giving cliches. And now it's like he's really, not only has his game grown, but he seems to have grown as a man as well. What have you seen from Jayson Tatum over the years?
Well, when you see him, you think about him as a player, what he's able to do. He has been a great player, shooting the basketball. He's starting to understand who he is. And I think the biggest thing about Jayson Tatum is that now he's starting to be more aware of people around him. How he's going to become a great player is that he has to win a championship, obviously, but he also has to make an imprint on the game every time he steps on the floor. The great ones do that. Played with Larry Bird, he might not score, but then what Larry Bird would do, he would get 15 assists or he'd get 10 or 12 rebounds. That's what the great players do, and I think he's starting to do that.
So, I think he's still evolving and finding his way and finding his place and finding his voice and finding all of this, which makes perfect sense. He just turned 24. This is his first finals. So that's probably where he should be. And he is, let's face it, to begin with, a little soft-spoken. That's just sort of his personality. Where someone like Steph Curry, on the other hand, 33 years old, he's been here 6 times now. He's in a different place. Does that work to the Warriors' advantage, Max?
I don't think so. I mean, Steph Curry is who he is. Here's a guy who has been around basketball forever. His father played basketball in the NBA. So he has been around players. You see film of him on the court when he's with Toronto. But what I like about him is the fact that Jayson Tatum right now is getting an understanding from his teammates and also from his fellow players. That's what really is amazing to me. We're starting to see the growth of the team around him. People are starting to say it's his basketball club. And because of that, I think that's why this team has gotten better. But he also has this great complementary unit of guys who understand and who have stepped back and allowed him to be that particular player.
All right, speaking of Steph Curry, he spoke today about what the finals means to him.
You get tested, you get pushed, and our experience kind of shows at the right time. So obviously in this situation, it's a must for us to win a championship. And we got to be up for that task.
All right, here are Curry's numbers in the series presented by Milton Cat, your area Caterpillar dealer. He's averaging 31.5 points per game, shooting 46% from three-point range in the series. Curry was a plus 24 in Game 2. All right, Max, I'm looking at Curry, and I'm surprised that he has had not only so much success from the field, but he's put up more shots than anybody in the series. He's put up 10 more shots, 10 more attempts than Jayson Tatum. What do the Celtics need to do schematically just to take some shots away from him? Forget about stopping him. How do you take some shots away from this guy and get him to pass the ball?
And one thing I think you do is put pressure on the quarterback. If you watch Draymond Green, what he's doing, he is standing back in the pocket like Tom Brady and able to just kind of pick you apart. So you have to put pressure on the ball and not allow him to get into space. And if you watch him, he's always moving without the basketball. Here, nobody's within 10 feet of him. Again, nobody within 10 feet. Identify the guy, the most dangerous guy on the floor, and stay in front of him.
Okay, I think they're worried and afraid to do it because if you double him, he is an excellent passer, and you create sort of an odd man situation on the weak side of the floor, and you get a 4-on-3 on that side, and they want to avoid Steph Curry passing into the 4-on-3 the other side of the court. So pick your poison, Max. What do you do?
Well, I think one of the things you do, you come up, not the double team, but you switch. And maybe a lot of times you switch with strength. And what I mean by that, if you have a Grant Williams that comes up, or you have Marcus Smart or Tatum or Brown, that's strength. Sometimes they ISO and get Al into no man's land, but Al is quick enough that he understands how to just keep Curry in front of him. So I like the position of the Celtics. I like what they're doing. And don't overplay your hand by just trying to stop Curry, because you're not going to do that. All you have to do is just try to contain this guy. He's a tremendous player. Obviously, shoots the ball better than anybody else. And I know somebody said before, well, his legacy, because he hasn't been an MVP, is that something he needs? No. He's the greatest player, one of the greatest players in the history of the game. And name me this. 2 players I can think of who have changed the way the game is played. One was Wilt Chamberlain, and now Steph Curry. And that's a tremendous blow when you think about who you are as a player.
Okay, how about the matchups on the other side? I know you two weren't all that impressed with Draymond Green on Jaylen Brown, even though Jaylen Brown went 1 for his last 13. But they also had Klay Thompson on Al Horford, which I find very interesting. And now, are they just trying to stash or hide Klay Thompson because he's gone downhill defensively? And again, here's Draymond Green defensively on Jaylen Brown. I thought he did a decent job. But Klay Thompson on Al Horford is interesting. Are they treating Al Horford more as a perimeter player, which I think is kind of smart? That's how I would treat Al Horford, by the way. He scares me way more at the three-point line than he does down on the block. If the Celtics want to come down and dump it into Al Horford to get 2-point shots on the block, I'd let him do it. I'm afraid of Al Horford out on the perimeter. And then also Wiggins on Tatum. Talk to me about those matchups, Max.
Well, I think if you look at Al, one thing you're going to do is take that man to the box. And then I think you pound him on the inside. Say, don't be worried about that. Yeah, be worried about that, because you can get Klay Thompson in foul difficulty. I don't think the Celtics did that enough in that game of really punishing Klay Thompson anytime he didn't have, because Al Horford had the height advantage and the weight advantage and the strength advantage. So you got to take him in the hole and play him that way. When you look over in Tatum, the way he's being played right now, they're filtering him over. And Wiggins is doing a nice job of coming and taking them towards help. And what he has to do is understand, Tatum has to understand when to pass the basketball, get in those little seams or little gaps and create situations for other players. And I think they'll be better off for it.
Yeah, I know Draymond said last year he's the best player in the history, best defensive player in the history of basketball. I don't think he's quite at that level yet, Felger. He's done a pretty good job.
Did he say that?
He did. That's an actual quote. You got to find that quote. It's unbelievable. Best defensive player in the history of the game.
Little strong.
Wow. Anyway, yesterday a video surfaced of Cedric Maxwell and Gary Payton discussing what would have happened to Draymond Green if he played in the 80s and tried to pull off his shenanigans. Turns out Green saw that video, and today he responded to Maxwell.
I saw what Cedric Maxwell said. And, one thing that baffles me about the 80s or the 90s or whatever you want to call when basketball was so much more physical is some of the guys that be talking weren't the guys that was punching people. Like they act like, guys was just walking around the court like I'm hitting this guy in the nose. There were a few guys back then that would lay you out, that would knock you out, that would foul you and get thrown out the game. Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn. But everybody running around acting like they were that. Y'all were getting bullied.
Max,
that's really interesting that he pick out a name like Rick Mahorn. And he would pick out, I think more than anybody, he goes on and said, Bill Laimbeer. Didn't we see Bill Laimbeer get beat down in front of us in the Garden with Robert Parrish out there?
Right.
And you can talk about the 80s all you want. It's not about me and him. here's this punch, and I'm over here. I'm trying to grab Charles Barkley by the neck. I'm putting him in a chokehold. This is a physicality of a game. Okay, let's see this one. Wait a minute. Lambert's intimidated. Yep, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, and then I asked Robert Parrish, I said, Robert, did you see anybody? Oh, man, that makes me sick right now. James Worthy pushed me back. But that was all right because we have one more game to play. It was fine. And this is still in litigation. I hope that white man is still alive. I'm not sure. But that was a whole nother thing that my teammates looked at. And I asked Robert Parrish about this punch, and I said, Robert, weren't you afraid that other players are going to come over and attack you? He said, I was thinking about that, but that's what they thought about him. They let me beat him down. So I don't worry about all these things. And again, it's not about Draymond Green and I, but I was just pointing out, in the 80s, there were some guys like Kermit Washington, there was Akeem Olajuwon, there were a bunch of guys who were mean, tough guys. And a lot of the shenanigans that's going on in the game right now with Draymond, that wouldn't have been tolerated during the 80s. Gary Payton, he identified, he said that.
And also, but the retaliations wouldn't have been, in Philadelphia, Max, when you went and hit that fan, we just showed the video, were you even thrown out of the game or did you keep playing?
Came back and started playing in the game. It was that's it. Just break it up, guys. Let's go for it.
That wouldn't happen.
There was no rule then, Felger.
Right.
There was a Cedric Maxwell rule that was out there about going in the stands later on. But at that time, went in the stands, gave the guy a little forearm shiver, came back in, said some choice words, and went on and started playing in the game.
Okay, so
that's the toughness of the game. Well, it's completely different.
If someone did that now, they'd be suspended for the rest of the year and fined $10 million. So
that's really true, and it's more again about that situation. I understand what Draymond is saying, but you keep saying about nobody punched nobody. You asked Charles Barkley what happened when he and I got in a fight down in Golden State when I was in L.A. with the Clippers. Norm Nixon happened to look at that thing. He calls me all the time and said, you know what, I'll testify, and I'll say you punched him a couple of times. So, look, I've been in enough of those. So Draymond wasn't even born when I was around playing, was he? Let me see. Let me do the math here.
Max, don't get
Draymond, ask your daddy who I was, okay? That's how that goes.